Hello and welcome everyone. Today we're going to go ahead and finally get to the Annihilation / Watchman PVP guide. As far as how this spec works in PvP, a lot of people have been asking me about it and they're kind of struggling to get damage out of it. It's not very in a great place right now, but it's still playable. And so we're going to kind of walk through everything about it, take a look at it, go through all the stats, everything like this. It's going to be pretty in depth. So it's going to be a little bit of a longer video. I just want to kind of take things step by step. First off, there's pretty much two ways to play the spec. There is the easy way and the more complex way. So what I'm going to show is the a little bit of the more complex way, just because it's something that I like to play it a little bit more. It has a little bit, you will gain DPS doing it the way I play it. But at first, I'll go over the easy way. So the easy way is going to be, let's go over here, let's go to our combat proficiencies. So the easy way is we're going to go to our combat proficiencies, and this is our abilities, as we are going to take Juyo Melt. So Juyo Melt is the easy way to play the spec. Essentially what this means is that we are going to be popping our Zen on cooldown. We don't have to manage where our dots are and kind of what our dots are hitting. We're just pretty much going to be spamming our abilities, popping Zen on cooldown, and make sure Cauterize is on the target. This is the easiest way to play the spec. You will lose DPS playing the spec this way, but it's going to be close. It's not some type of very major DPS loss, but it is ultimately a DPS loss. So we'll talk about it. The other things that I always take is Transcendence, so level 27 choice. Take Transcendence, that's Predation. Then if we move up to our level 39 choice, it's always going to be Cauterizing Focus. There's nothing else to choose from. Level 43, we're going to take Burning Center. The other choices are just bad. Level 51, I like to have 2 leaps when it comes to PvP. Uptime equals damage, and we'll kind of go over this spec and how it performs in PvP and why you really need this. Then we have level 64. The only choice here is going to be Zealous Ward. Anything that gives us more healing and more durability is always good. Plus, we get some CC immunity. It's something that Watchman / Annihilation is really lacking. Level 68, Guarded by the Force. Again, it synergizes with our ability to heal, and we can use this to outplay mechanics. It's very strong. Level 73, again, we're all in on our healing. So we are taking Inspired Focus. We don't care too much about the whole Inspiration giving us 12 focus. We care about the 1% of our maximum health whenever you activate an ability that consumes focus. So we're going to be consuming a lot of focus. This is what the spec does. The spec builds focus and spends focus as quick as possible. So let's get started with the rotation. So our rotation for this spec when running Juyo Melt is very, very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to leap in. While we're in the midair where we're leaping in, we're going to use our Overload Saber because it doesn't respect the GCD. So it should look like this. And I keep mine, but I'm just going to click so I can show you guys. So you're going to Force Leap, Overload Saber. Next, you're going to follow that with your Merciless Slash so we can get our stacks rolling here on our Merciless Slash and the cooldown going. Then we're going to go ahead and use our Cauterize, our Force Melt, and then we're going to use Twin Saber Throw. After that happens, then we're just going to start spamming Slash so everything is pretty much back up and off of cooldown. We really, when we're using Juyo Melt with our tacticals and everything, something I didn't show, we should take a look at that. So our legendaries, we're using Berserker's Call. It has a reduced cooldown of Valorous Call, not something we really care about. What we really care about is whenever we activate Zen and increases all our damage dealt by 5% for 10 seconds, we should be popping Zen constantly. So it's just pretty much a straight 5% damage increase for us. And then Dispatcher's Package. This just helps us generate focus. This is the big thing with this one. It helps us generate focus and gives us a nice little buff on our execute. So those are the two. They're best in slot. There's not any choice here. Same thing with our tactical. Our tactical, we're running Spiteful Saber. So Spiteful Saber, we're going to run this because it pretty much ticks our Cauterize, and Cauterize becomes a fire and forget spec. I'm not a big fan of this tactical, but it just does so much damage you kind of have to run it. So let's get back to the rotation. So again, take it step by step. And remember, this is the easy way to do it. So Force Leap, Overload Saber. Should have enough energy to do it. I kind of messed it up. Then you're going to Merciless Slash. You can do Force Melt or Cauterize. Doesn't really matter the order. Your overload, your twin saber throw should come after that, and then we're just spamming our slash until we get back to overload saber. And we're just spamming our slash more. We're gonna force melt. We're gonna pop Zen. So our Zen, we're gonna pop it every time it comes up. And then at this point, we're just hitting things on cooldown. So overload saber, torch slow, our Zen, slash. This is just nothing complicated here. We should never run out of focus with our dispatcher's challenge. And then we do our overload saber, our Zen's back, and our Zen also gives us focus. So we just kind of keep going through this. And that is the very simple, easy rotation. I'll show you guys what it looks like when you keybind it. It's going to look a lot smoother. So we'll wait for this combat to drop off. All right, so we'll go ahead and get our full stacks. Full stacks of centering, and we'll do this in kind of real time. So force sleep, overload saber, Zen, merciless slash, force melt, cauterize, twin saber throw. Then we're gonna just start filling with our slashes. Slashes, slashes, merciless slashes back, we hit it. Slash, overload saber, Zen, force melt. And we're just gonna keep on doing this, and that's all it is. There's nothing tricky about this or anything like that. Sometimes you'll get a little RNG mixed up where you'll have to use your Zealous Strike to build focus. It doesn't happen often, but again, we're just hitting the things on cooldown. There's nothing amazing about this spec when you're playing it this way. There's not really any thinking. That's why this is the easy way to play the spec. Playing the spec this way, though, is not going to give you the optimal DPS. It's going to get you close. It'll get you in the ballpark, but it will not get to the advanced kind of higher level DPS, and it will matter in situations. From my experience, and from a lot of testing that I've done, playing the spec this way is about a 3k DPS loss as far as absolute maximum output. So that is the easy way to play the spec. Now, the hard way to play the spec requires a lot more thinking, a lot more planning. This is the way I like to play the spec because it's a little bit more engaging. So instead of taking Juyo Melt, what we're taking is we're taking Melting Center. So Melting Center means our Force Melt deals twice its initial damage whenever it consumes a stack of Zen, and heals you for 35% of the damage it deals. Everything else is the same. These are the only two we're swapping, but it completely swaps the way we're going to play this class. So our opening is going to be very similar. We're going to go ahead and get our stacks here for Zen. We're going to basically do the same thing. So we're going to force leap in. We're going to overload saber during our leap. Oh, I kind of messed that up. Hold on a second. I know I should have locked it because I was clicking on it. Let me find our abilities. Let me find our Zealous Strike again and put it back on. Cut this part out. There we go. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start with the way to play it, the more advanced way here. So we got our full stacks and everything. So again, we're going to force leap in, overload saber while we're doing it. Now, we're going to go ahead and use our Zealous Strike, merciless slash, cauterize. We're going to Zen, then we're going to do force meld. In this spec, your Zen should always, in this discipline, the way we're going to play it, your Zen should always come before your force melt. It's going to give you more overall DPS. So you're going to Zen and force melt. And there's a step to go even farther, and we'll talk about it. But I want to kind of get this basic idea first. So, force leap, overload saber, merciless slash, cauterize, Zen, force meld, twin saber throw. Then we start going through our slashes, and then we kind of complete that. Again, we're saving our Zen this time. Our Zen is being saved for when we have our force melt, so we can proc our draining center. So we're going to keep doing that over and over. That means we're going to be a little bit more starved on focus right here. As you see, our focus is a little bit tighter. So, but we should be able to get through it. It's going to be very tight. And there's going to be some RNG instances where you are, like here, you're going to have to use your Zealous Strike. So our twin saber throw. Boom. Again, we're delaying our force melt till we get our Zen, and then we're using it. Every time, we're going to have to delay it. So again, we're going through our rotation. We're hitting our Zealous Strike. We're low on focus. We're just pretty much waiting. We're using this. Again, we have then, we can force melt, and then we can go back into our rotation. So that is the kind of the key thing when we're doing it the more advanced way. And this is going to give us higher DPS. And we'll take a look at the parses and stuff when I kind of go all the way through it. So Zen, Force Melt, Twin Saber Throw, then we basically continue the rotation. So slash, slash. So let's take a look at it one more time from the beginning. I want to make sure I kind of show you how it's supposed to look completely with keybinds and everything. It's a little bit hard for me to show you with clicking, just because I hate clicking. I think anyone that clicks, you just can't play Sentinel. It's almost impossible, especially Watchman. So we're going to go ahead and force sleep that. We're going to Zen. We're going to do this. I like to use it early. It really doesn't matter the order you do it. And now we're into our meat of our rotation. Boom. So here we are. We're in our lane. We used that before. So we're hitting our Zen before our Force Melt. And again, we're just going through our rotation now. So there is one more thing we have to do to really get the optimum DPS out of this. But this is just how it basically should look. You should really be using your slash to fill in our gaps. You should be using our Zen to give us our energy back, our Twin Saber Throw. We should just be kind of set now. Like I said, there are going to be times when we use our Zealous Strike, like right there, when we just don't have the energy for it. It happens. Now, for those of you who have played this at a high level, you'll notice there is something that I'm doing that I'm not supposed to be doing. Like I said, this is the kind of the intermediate way to play it. There is another level to it, and that's what we're going to take a look like in a second here. But again, we're just kind of going through our rotation. We don't have any energy. No big deal. We'll use our Zealous Strike. And we just keep on going. All right. So that is the kind of the basics for playing the Juyo Mastery and the Draining Center version. The Draining Center version is more DPS. Now, to go even farther than that, there is a thing you could do with Watchman / Annihilation called Perma Deadly Saber. What that means is that we're going to put our Overload Saber, there's also Deadly Saber on the inside. This will pretty much be up permanently. There's going to be almost no delay between when this is on the target and when our next one starts. To do this, we really have to pay attention. I've got kind of the habit of just kind of knowing how to do it, and I can do it pretty consistently even in war zones. But it's something that a lot of people are going to struggle with. So I'm going to kind of go over this, and this is going to be a little bit hard for me to click and do it. I'm not going to be able to. It's going to be impossible. But I'll kind of talk through it as I'm doing it. So let's go ahead and get our stacks of our Zen. Now, Perma Deadly Saber, we're going to take advantage of the fact that this stacks 3 times. So at 2 stacks, we want to hit our Force Meld to extend our Deadly Saber. And I'll kind of show you as we get into it. So again, everything's going to be kind of the same. So we're going to leap in, Overload Saber, we can Zealous Strike, we can do this. Now we're going to Zen. See how we have our stacks? We're going to Force Melt, and we're going to do this, because it's going to refresh our stacks. Now we have it set up where when our stacks fall off, we have another Deadly Saber ready to go. See how it's stacking again? And then we can do it again. Now, since I was kind of explaining to it, I messed it up a little bit. But we kind of look at it, 1 stack, 2 stack, 3 stacks. The goal is to make it so when you have 2 stacks on here, you use your Force Melt. That'll make it so your next Deadly Saber will come on and the cooldowns will all line up. Let me kind of show you an example of it. That it's hard for me to do when I'm trying to do it slow, because you can't really do it slow. The timing on this has to be pretty much perfect. There's an easier way to do it. You can do it with 1 stack, which might be better. Actually, let me try that. I'm gonna do it with 1 stack and kind of show you what I mean. It'll be a little bit easier to show you. So again, we're gonna do the same. We're gonna jump in. Now see how we have our 1 stack? If we use our Force Melt, that stack keeps going. Now when we use our Merciless Slash, it resets it, but our cooldown keeps going. So by the time the stacks pop off, see our stacks pop off, we have it back up. So we can use it again. Again, now we have our 2 stacks, so we can Zen, we can Force Meld, and we can extend that Deadly Saber. And once that falls off, guess what? We'll have our Deadly Saber back up. So it's gonna permanently be applied. Again, I messed it up a little bit there because I'm kind of going slow through it. The way it works is if you go fast enough through rotation with your alacrity, you hit it pretty much exactly the right time. So let me show you an example of it in full use. This is something that I've gotten very good at being able to do in PvP. I know a lot of people struggle with this, and it is a little bit hard sometimes to keep it up with CC and stuff, but it's kind of a feel thing for me at this point, where I just know where it's going to be. But let's go ahead and start. So we got our 1, our 2, boom, our cauterized, twin saber throw, and we just wait. Now, once it comes off, we can do it again. 1, 2, boom. See how I still have that 1? Now, see how the cooldown is? Now, I'm going to kind of delay it a little bit. And then we're going to start stacking it. 1, 2. We use our force melt. Then we use this. We got a little screw of RNG there with our Zen timing, which happens. So, 1. Now our Merciless Slash is going to be 2. Then we're going to do that. So that'll give us our 3. Again, we pretty much are never going to be without Deadly Saber at this point. 1, 2, and our Force Melt. So you see how the moment that that actually expires, our Deadly Saber is ready to be put back on. And then we're going to try and... The next part of it is what I did there. I just did it instinctually, but we want to try to have Zen with our Deadly Saber as well. It's not going to work out this time. I kind of messed it up, but you kind of get the idea. It's a little bit hard to do when I'm kind of talking through it too. So the idea is we always have Deadly Saber pretty much on a target, and when it's at 2 stacks, we want to pop Zen plus our Force Meld, and then we can put our last stack on there, because it's going to make us, by the time all the 3 stacks drop off, we're going to have our Deadly Saber back. So now I'm going to do it in real time. I might not talk through this one as much, because it does require a little bit of concentration to make sure we hit all the timings. But it's doable. As you can see, watching our stacks, I kind of just have a feel for it at this point. So we hit our Zen right before it, so now we are getting all of the DPS possible. We got our 3 stacks there. I want to make sure I have energy for the next round. 1, 2, we're going to pop Valorous Call to keep it going on the stacks, because we didn't have enough RNG on our focus, our generation. Here, I'm going to delay it just a second so I can match it up with our Zen. And now we have our 1 stack. That's the way to do it, as a 1 stack. That's a lot more what I do in PvP, is to keep it on the 1 stack kind of thing. It doesn't line up perfectly, but it's close enough. Plus, it gets you with your Zen a little bit easier on your Force Meld. You can do it multiple different ways. When you're actually in a PvP fight, I'm pretty much always doing it as a 1 stack. But, again, like I said, it's easy to recover and to stacking it up completely the proper way. So as you can see, we're going through it. Our 1, our 2, our Zen, Force Meld, Cauterize. We are just keeping our stacks. That's the whole thing. We want to make sure we keep our Zen with our Force Meld, keep our stacks all going at the same time. Now right here, I messed up because I ran out of focus. And that was on me. That's what happens when you start trying to talk your way through it, instead of just kind of letting muscle memory and kind of take over. I've gotten kind of to the point where I just do it naturally, but when I'm talking about it and not really just letting it play, it's a little bit awkward. So again, let me give you one more thing, and again, I'm not talking at all through this one, so that's why I like to try to do it with 1 stack in PvP. It makes it a lot simpler. I'll show you guys the 1 stack way. This is not something that you have to do. This is one of those things where, like, you were feeling you want to go to, like, the next level of mechanics, and as far as Watchman Annihilation, this is, like, the ultimate kind of level. So, we're going to go ahead and do it as a 1 stack, just because it's a little bit easier for me to show you. And it keeps a little bit better timing for us. As you can see, the one stack variant of it is very easy. That's what I would recommend. For especially when you're just starting out. Like again, the optimal is 2 stacks. But when you're just starting out, just keeping the 1 stack of permanent deadly saber on is absolutely fine. You see, as I just kind of talk about it, I'm just naturally keeping 2 stacks on because I'm just so used to it at this point. You see, I messed up a little bit. I didn't get the RNG, but sometimes I will pause attacks just so I can hit the Zen with the melting centering. It actually makes sense to do it. Right here, we needed more focus. And the spec is a little bit RNG-wise. As you can see, we finally got it. It's a little bit RNG if you can keep Perma-Deadly Saber up sometimes. It happens where you're just not going to be able to. You just kind of have to roll with it. And I think that's the... that in the next patch that's getting fixed. So you'll actually be able to keep it up pretty consistently. Sometimes you just need that one more focus to keep it up, to keep it going, to keep your Zen aligned with your Force Meld and your Permanent Deadly Saber. Especially when you try to do like the 2 stacks. We try to get it completely optimally, like the 2-stack Permanent Deadly Saber like that. Essentially what you're doing is when you're 2-stacking it, you are using Zen on your 3rd stack of Overload Saber. So it makes your dots crit and take a little bit harder. Like I said, the DPS difference that I have seen is somewhere between 4 to 5k. That's on a parse. In reality, it's probably something like 2,500. Like 2.5k reality, being able to do this versus the Juyo Melt version of it. So over here is Star Parse. If you guys don't know what it is a third-party parsing program. It actually works in real time now for healing and everything. It's something I highly recommend you kind of looking in and checking out. I really wouldn't PvP without it. It gives you so much useful information. But what I would just want to show you is the difference. So let's start with Juyo Melt. Just the overall DPS difference between the two. And again, we're just doing this on a Warzone training dummy just because it doesn't really matter. I'm just looking for the DPS difference. We'll just click off of our stacks and everything to make it what it should be in our Merciless Slash. All right. So it's kind of a fresh parse, so we'll go ahead and get into it. And this is kind of what we're going to be doing, what we're going to be parsing. Remember, our Zen placement really doesn't matter that much when we're doing this. We're just basically using our Zen mainly for energy, really. As you can see, we'll hit some decent numbers. We should always have energy. That's what makes playing it this way a lot easier. You don't really have to focus on the energy management side of it, because you're just always going to have it. No matter what. And it makes it very simple. See, we're at 28k DPS right now. On the PvP draining dummy, going to 29. That's about where it's going to hit. In that 29, 28k, just depending on crits. It'll hit a little bit different on the actual training dummy, but I don't have accuracy, so it's not going to make it... I have 105 accuracy, so I can't really do it on the actual PvE training dummy. But that's not really what we're concerned about. We're concerned about the difference between the numbers. So as you see, we're just going through, and we never have to really use anything as far as like building focus or anything. And that's what makes this kind of like the lazy way of doing it. The DPS isn't as good as the other side, and I'll show you once we get through this a little bit. So we're just kind of going through here. You can see, pretty consistent. I mean, that's 28k-ish range. Just depending on how crits go, it can get up to the 29k. So now we're going to look at it through the Melting Center version, which is going to be a DPS increase. But again, you're going to have to pay a lot more attention for the DPS increase. It's really going to be up to you if you feel the DPS increase is going to be worth it. Let me take all of our stacks off to make it fair. All right, so this is the melting centering one. As you can see, the DPS is going to be a little bit different. Like I said, you're going to see the DPS numbers start to climb a little bit higher with this version. I already know what's going to. So we just kind of get through it, and we're keeping our perma-deadly saber up as well. This is pretty much how it should be looking from start to finish. I know we're going to need some more energy. I just already kind of have the feeling about it, so we'll go ahead and just use it. We got kind of screwed by RNG there a little bit with our Zen placement. So we're going to have to delay our next force meld, which it happens sometimes when you're doing this spec this way. So we're going to have to delay it by a lot so we can get our proc. It does suck. But now we get back to it. And still, even if we have to delay it, it's going to give us more overall DPS. It's just something we don't like to do if we don't have to. Again, we'll get our 2 stacks, we'll use our procs and everything. As you can see, there is a DPS difference. Now, does the DPS warrant, like, this? That's going to be up to you to decide. Like I said, it's not some type of massive, blatant DPS increase, but it is a DPS increase. I just thought I would show you, just so you guys know. If you do play it this way, the Melting Center is a little bit more of a DPS increase, but at the same time, it's a little bit harder to play. Like right now, I'm fumbling around a little bit, and sometimes we do have to delay things with it. Like here, I'm going to delay it to get our second stack. But as you can see, this spec, usually when we're doing something, is going to be in the 30k-ish range. So like I said, it's roughly probably 31k-ish at the highest parts in the Warzone number. So we're looking at about 2,000 to 3,000 DPS increase by running the Melting Center version. It's a lot more difficult to pull off, but it's a DPS increase. I prefer to run Melting Center just because I'm pretty good at keeping everything and keeping all the dots rolling, even in PvP, even with all the CC. If you're just starting, I would recommend starting with Juyo Melt, then getting a little bit better, a little bit more comfortable, then going for the Melting Centering kind of version of it and making sure everything works there. So that's pretty much Annihilation in a nutshell in Watchman. There used to be a lot more things you can do with cutting some things and clipping some dots and stuff like that, but that all got removed in 4.0 or 5.0, so you can't really do that anymore. The only other thing in this spec is the dot spread. So for those of you that don't know, your force sweep will spread your force melt and your Carter eyes. To be honest with you, the dot spread in this spec is pretty weak. Unless you're hitting more than 2 targets with it, I wouldn't even worry about it. It really isn't that good of a dot spread. The dot spread is so weak in this spec that it's really not worth it. You really want to be looking at this spec as a single target DPS pressure spec. And that's kind of how to play it. Single target DPS pressure, you're bringing heals to the group. You're also bringing your utility with your predation, your survivability, your tankiness, your ability to stick on people with your 2 force sleeps and your transcendence. So really good. The spec actually has a very good matchup against Madness. That is one of the main reasons to play this spec right now, is it completely just destroys Madness. Madness cannot compete with just the healing and everything. Madness gets shut down. The interrupts, being able to stealth out, being able to interrupt their stuff, being able to 2 leaps to interrupt, and the transcendence, just Madness can't deal with it. So it's very strong into Madness. It's also very strong into Commandos, any of the Merc specs. Things that it struggles against It struggles against engineering a lot. Anything that can root it over and over and over again, like engineering, it struggles against. It struggles against lethality. It's just hard for you to do damage to lethality based on lethality's DR and their off heals and everything. Deception against Annihilation is a bit of a 50-50. It's probably more of a 70-30 in favor of Deception. So it depends on how you use your cooldowns. If you can get your cooldowns to mitigate the burst, you can win against Deception. Against a PT 1v1, you should win against both specs. Just in a vacuum, you should win. Jugs are kind of 50-50 too. It depends on how you use your DCDs. Jugs, you really have to use Guarded by the Force a little bit earlier, kind of predict their burst, because once you predict their burst, you win. You really don't even need any more DCDs. You can just outlast them at that point. It's just, they can burst you to almost half health. So if you can play around that, you're good. That's why engineering, you also have a problem with it. You just kind of have to play around with it. And then all the control and the roots and the engineering probe, it just sucks for this spec. And the fact you can't leap to them. All the sniper specs just are awful to play into. It's very good at tanks. So if you want a tank tunnel, the spec is very good at tanks. Has a lot of elemental damage. Notoriously, tanks are bad at taking elemental damage. All the tanks are. So kind of the matchups there. I'm trying to think if there's any other matchups. Oh, the Mara matchups. The Mara matchups, you will probably lose against Carnage and win against Fury. You should be able to outlast Fury's damage. Fury's not like the super OP. Carnage has enough burst where you can outplay it. It's probably 60-40. And it's kind of a little bit of a skill, kind of a dance to see with Carnage. It's kind of like predicting when they're actually going to throw their burst. That's the biggest thing about this spec. When you use your DCDs, you want to use your DCDs against their burst. And if you're in a 1v1 situation, if you can do that, you're pretty much going to win all duels. You really are. The problem is sometimes it's harder to time it with other things. Like Jug is pretty easy to time it with. They telegraph their stuff. Their stuff is pretty easy. You can tell when their big hit's coming. Same thing with PTs. PT is very easy to use your DCDs correctly. Madness, again, also easy to use your DCDs correctly. Deception, it's kind of tough because they're going to open up from stealth. And very good Deception players will basically open up from stealth, see if you break, and then if you pop a cooldown, they'll go back to stealth and just wait for your cooldowns to run out. That can happen too. But overall, this spec doesn't have anything where it instantly loses a 1v1 matchup against anything. There are definitely some matchups that are very hard for it, but it still has a chance against everything. I wouldn't say anything's like some super hard counter to this spec. The biggest counter to the spec is just the amount of CC and roots. You're very good in 1v1s. 2 Madness Sorks with all the roots and stuff, yeah, you're probably going to die. I think if there's any other like big matchups, I mean, if you lose to Commandos with this spec, stop playing it. Commandos are the easiest thing in the world for this spec to deal with. The spec just eats up Commandos. It eats up Sork healers too. The spec eats up Commandos, Sork healers, Merc healers. Like, spec eats those things up. This is what the spec is made to do. They're made to get on those healers. Operative healers, you have a little bit of a hard time, but that's just because operatives are where they are right now. They're very good. Generally, operative healers with a spec are actually fine, but they're still a little bit overtuned. You're very good at going through the tanks. The tank that you will struggle with, believe it or not, is actually going to be the Assassin tank, the Sin tank. You're going to struggle a little bit with that, but the PT and Jug tank, you'll just roll through. You really should. The PT and Jug tank, you should have such an advantage on. Just with your elemental damage, especially against Jugs, they just can't handle it. I'm thinking about concealment will give you some problems sometimes, depending on how good the concealment operative is. If the concealment operative is good, you probably won't win. But there's a lot of the concealment ops will blow their burst when they root you. So if you can kind of time that out and kind of DCD, you'll probably be fine against concealment, because concealment's just not that strong right now. That's kind of all I'm kind of thinking. Like I said, the spec's very good into 1v1s. It really, really loves the 1v1 if you have an opportunity to 1v1 someone in this spec, you should just go ahead and take advantage of it, especially if you have all your cooldowns, if you have your Valorous Call, if you have everything up. There's very few 1v1s that you're going to lose. It can happen. It can definitely happen. But very few if you have all your stuff up. The ones that I struggle the most with, like I said, are the sniper classes. So your marksman, your engineering, you just can't get to them. Those are they're basically anti-melee. And this class is really doesn't have any of this, like the CC immunity outside of your saber ward. So that's probably your biggest struggle. That and concealment ops. Those are the two classes that really kind of screw you over. Even deception isn't that bad because you can win against deception. Hatred you should win against too. You really should. Hatred just doesn't have the DCDs that you do. They can't outlast you in a 1v1 situation. Like I said, operative healers you struggle against, but they're not going to 1v1 you either. Skank tanks, jug skank tanks can get a little bit scary. But that's just a matter of using your DCDs correctly. It's just going to take you a while. That's all that is. You're just going to be there for ages. So that's kind of the rundown as far as Watchman / Annihilation goes. If you guys have anything in the questions or comments or anything else you guys want to know, or if you guys want to see me do this for other classes, this isn't the only class I play. I play this class the majority of the time just because I like a challenge. I like things that are a little bit more complicated. That's why I like to play the draining centering version of it. But I can also go through some of the easier specs. I know how to play Jug Tank and PT and Madness, Sork, and Deception. I've played Deception, I've played Hatred. Op Healer is the one healer that Op and Merc Healer. I don't play too much of the Sork Healer, I just find it boring. But just let me know in the comments if you guys want anything else. And as always, have a good day.